All right, fantastic. So yeah, following that welcome and those dashboard stories, we wanted to split off the content into SquaredUp Cloud and SquaredUp DS, just so you can go a bit deeper into both of these products. But obviously, on the DS side, there's nice integration with Cloud, but right here we'll be talking purely about Cloud. No SCOM or DS in the mix at all. Actually, now I think about it. So I'm going to be helped out in this section by three folk from SquaredUp, Adam, Dave, and Vince. So I'm just going to be guiding you through the narrative here, and really that's all hopefully going to be around what's new, just get you up to speed with the very latest in SquaredUp Cloud. So hopefully you have played with it and you're exploring it. You might not be in it day to day, so you may have missed a few of the things that we've come out with in the last weeks and months, but also what's coming. I'll finish off at the end with a sneak preview of some of the things we have lined up for you. But I wanted to use those as bookends for the sandwich here in the middle. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into what makes SquaredUp special, and actually we touched on that in the welcome and some of those customer stories there, which is fantastic. And so we're just looking a little bit more at those drill downs and those dynamic dashboards and how you can leverage those with SquaredUp Cloud. So with that agenda, let's kick off with what's new. Unlike the dashboard server product, where we give them the releases numbers and they're coming out at about maybe sort of 2-3 times a year, we'll have a minor release. Maybe every year or so we'll have a major release, depending on what we're delivering and whether it's a major upgrade. With SquaredUp Cloud, it's a SaaS product and we're delivering continuously. And I wanted to actually start by just showing some of our internal dashboards here. This is Tim Wheeler's dashboard, head of engineering at SquaredUp, and he's using the DORA metrics framework just to give him some sense of how we're doing, but a nice dashboard to steal and to sort of show you, just to make that point around how often we're deploying. So the no data to show in the middle, don't worry about that. That's a good thing because there are no deployment failures. So we're looking at how many of those deploys fail, and we have to sort of roll them back just from a deployment point of view. So 0 there, that's great. And just down the bottom there, you see how long it's taking us to push through changes. But it was the top section I just wanted to draw your attention to. The graph here is how many deployments we're pushing into prod every day, and that's our metric for the last week. And you can see here, just looking at the average over the previous week and then comparing it with last week, we're doing around about 3 deploys a day into prod, and each of those deploys can actually contain a number of code changes, so maybe some features, some bug fixes, and so on. So if you wake up in the morning, SquaredUp's probably going to be a little bit different to what it was when you finished with it the night before. If you look at it again after lunch, it's probably going to be a little bit different. And at the end of the day, if you just sort of, before you knock off, have a quick look at SquaredUp, it will probably be a little bit different. Now, in most cases, it's not going to be visibly different. A lot of what we do is behind the scenes. Obviously, there's little fixes, little sort of maintenance and internal changes. And this, another nice dashboard just gives us all visibility of what's flowing through our pipelines from developer through into prod. And you can see here, actually, I think I took this last night when I was just putting these slides together. We have 5 releases in the queue, and they're in prod, but we also have a sort of canary deployment model where we deploy out to some internal users of SquaredUp, just so we can give one final last sort of run of any of those changes and a chance for anyone just to say, it's broken a particular dashboard maybe, or something unusual they were doing. So here last night we actually had sort of 5 releases that were in prod, and we're waiting to be deployed out to customer environments after that 48-hour canary window. So you see everything's green there. Apart from that, fast forward releases is what we can do just if we need to push through a release urgently. And down the bottom right, I blurred out some. You can get an idea. These are not all big, amazing features that you're going to be blown away by when you next log on, but really this sort of constant stream of changes from small fixes to some more significant features and user impacting changes. So that kind of gives you a flavor of what's happening. So actually it's very hard ever to present like what's new. It's like, well, depends on, what's new since when, what's new since yesterday, what's new since a month ago. So I put this together just as a flavor of what's been new in the last 6 months. So obviously of those sort of hundreds of releases we're pushed out into prod, and you would have seen as a continuous improvement in SquaredUp Cloud. Here are some of the highlights I picked out, just around 4 themes, and that's what we've been working on over the last 6 months. Certainly Top left theme, just the flexibility to build that perfect dashboard. To really sort of, I guess, echo the point that Andre made. We know that SquaredUp Cloud has to be super versatile. You are using it because you want to use it for all sorts of different data sources and for all sorts of different dashboards. And so we're constantly making it more versatile, more flexible, and trying to listen to your feedback and add in those additional options. The bottom left, we also know that at the end of the day, your time is precious. You're trying to build these dashboards, but also you're wanting to push those dashboards out to other users. So we're constantly making the product easier to use, both for you as a dashboard author and an administrator, but also for those end users. Top right, really then starting to look at some of the more challenging questions within dashboarding and visualization across such a broad spectrum of concerns, which is how do you actually deliver those insights at scale? How do you stop just SquaredUp becoming a place where there's thousands of dashboards sprawl that are all not connected. So we're working on a bunch of features there and delivered some over the last 6 months, and we'll be talking about what we have coming in a second. And then the bottom right, obviously the bread and butter of SquaredUp is the integrations with those data sources. So both the breadth and depth of those integrations, and you can see a number that we have there. So obviously a lot to get through. I'm not going to try and sort of cover all this. If you spotted something here and we're interested in it, from Okta authentication to I don't know, obviously the new CSV data source or the GitHub data source, then please do head to those booths and meet the experts after this presentation. But what I wanted to do is ask Adam, VP of Innovation here at SquaredUp. Basically, his job is to play with the fun stuff, and obviously all the new things coming out with SquaredUp Cloud are fun. So Adam gets the privilege of showing you his highlights, I guess, of the last few months and some of the things he's been playing with recently. Adam, over to you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I'll go ahead and share. Apart from playing with all the fun stuff, I'm also I can be a bit of a fun police. I like order. I don't like chaos in our internal environment. So I've been very pleased to see some good things around sort of organization and being able to understand sort of what people are doing, being able to sort of group things and just understand the huge sprawl. So when I found a workspace called Bruce Delete the other day, I was on it. But anyway, I'll share a tab and I'll just walk through a couple of things. I'll start with actually just with the login screen. Just it's the first thing most people see. Well, it's the first thing everybody sees. So it never really gets a lot of love. You just click go and get past it. But we did find that some people were struggling to spot the difference between signing up and signing in. Perfectly valid. So the sign in screen is now the sign up screen is the sort of flashier looking sort of marketing screen with the nice graphics on it. And for any of you who haven't yet signed up, as you can see right here, you can get started for free. But the sign in screen is now just much cleaner. It's very much aligned with what you'd see from Microsoft or Google. So it's just a nice clean experience, and I'm just going to sort of log straight in here. And of course, my password manager isn't working because I'm sharing my screen, so bear with me just 1 second. Nice security measure.
Who would have thought the logon was the hardest bit of this demo?
Right, so we'll start at the top. Squid Ink's our sort of main demo environment. It's where we do most of our demos from, and it is always an absolute mess. So the first thing I just wanted to very, very quickly highlight without going into too much depth is just the improvements that we're making on this organizational homepage. And there's lots more coming on that. I won't go into too much depth. But community answers is where I thought I'd focus the things I'm going to show off. It's our community platform, and community is very much the spirit of today's event. But as you can see from all of these other apps and websites that we monitor in our environment here, it's just a big gray box. And the reason it's a big gray box is because all of the juicy data is not available by API. Pretty straightforward. So all I've ever been able to build for community answers so far is a dashboard just showing publicly available information, just basically scraping all the latest posts. Kind of interesting, but it's not really monitoring, and it's certainly not enough to give me any understanding of health. So I'll start. Let's build a monitoring dashboard. Now I know we've got Pingdom in this environment, and when I add this plugin into my workspace, it's going to highlight the first feature that I'm really pleased that we added. So when I choose Pingdom and I choose to install the sample dashboards, which is a pretty common thing for people to do, the overview dashboard for Pingdom has appeared in a folder, which is great because it means there isn't just a huge sprawl of dashboards. And just to highlight a huge sprawl of dashboards, let's just add the Azure plugin as well, and we'll have the sample dashboards for that. And before we added workspace folders, this would result in just a massive pile of dashboards. And if you're already in a fairly busy workspace and you just wanted to add that Azure data source, you maybe haven't used it before and you wanted the dashboards, this would end up as a real sort of mess. So having folders lets you tidy it up, and it also, if you've added these dashboards by accident, you can delete the folder and get rid of all the dashboards, which is pretty neat. But for now, let's just start with our simple monitoring dashboard. So this is showing me everything from Pingdom. It's an interesting way for me to just figure out what's available. But actually, all I really care about in this case is the monitor for community answers. So I'm just going to change the scope of this to community answers, and I'll maybe change this tile to show me let's say the response time instead of the name. I know it's community answers. So that's pretty straightforward. I'll get rid of these tiles because they aren't quite what I want at this point. And I'll go ahead and add what I think is one of the best ways to monitor anything. It's just to look at it. So let's go for the new embed tile. I'm just going to drop in a URL and we'll render the page. Pretty straightforward. And one thing to point out here is this allowed domains section at the bottom. We aren't going to allow you to just embed anything you want. And a SquaredUp admin in your environment has to whitelist domains that you're allowed to embed. So, potentially a wildcard for your company domain. But this is just a great way to throw in a preview of a web page or some other app that you want to embed. And this, like I said, is one of the most straightforward ways to monitor anything, is just to actually have it available and visible. And it's worth saying as well that there is a data stream for embedding. So if you have a data stream that's returning URLs, you can make this dynamic, which is pretty cool, especially when Dave digs into a feature that we're going to show a bit later on. So folders are great. It's let me sort of keep things tidy. I can maybe just rename that to monitoring and maybe start building a nice sort of collection of dashboards. But something else I'd really love to put on this is not necessarily sort of a technical monitor, more of a business monitor. And that's going to be to bring in some CSV data. Because while Community does have an API, it really is just about the content. So I'll go ahead and add the CSV plugin. Mike showed it sort of very, very briefly before. The plugin itself doesn't require any configuration. It just gives you two data streams that you can use. Let's just go ahead and rename that to monitoring for now. So on my overview dashboard, I'm just going to pull in some data. And the most straightforward way to do this, especially if it's quite a small data set, is with the raw text data stream. So I actually have just a very simple export from our community platforms admin site. It just gives me CSV files. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste that in. Pretty straightforward. Boom, data's in and it's available in my tile, and I can now work with this like I would with anything else. So if I go ahead and just change this around to use the day along the bottom, I now have page stats. I can see how busy Community Answers is on certain days, whether there's any maybe interesting traffic, interesting trends sort of showing up in there. And it is as straightforward as that. I just pasted in some CSV data. And this is I guess, a really approachable way for business users to be able to build dashboards and share key insights, especially in a reporting context where it is maybe, data that only changes once a month. On my activity dashboard, I'll use the CSV plugin again, and we can add some other data in here using the other data stream, which is this file data stream. And that's what Mike showed in his demo. So let me just grab my file URL. So I've got an Azure Logic app. It's pulling this data out of Community Answers, and it is putting it into an Azure blob. And I can just paste the URL in, and we'll go off and get the data, just like we would with anything else. So again, it's just a CSV file, and there's all my raw data. And again, I can use this however I want. So for example, I may want to sort this by, let's say, the the user that's given the most likes, maybe that's an interesting stat. Maybe I will keep this as a table, and I'll just get rid of all of these columns apart from username. Pretty straightforward. So there we go. Just some very, very simple, approachable way to get access to CSV data. And of course, because this is in a file share, if I update that file remotely, the data in my dashboard will change. So CSV is just a really, really great way of, again, just very quickly getting that data that maybe doesn't change too often, just straight into a dashboard. Or if you do have something like a Logic app that's updating a file in SharePoint, something available via an API, it's a really, really straightforward way to just enrich a dashboard with sort of, I guess, let's say other types of data that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So a much simpler approach than PowerShell or things like that. Massively requested by our customer base. I just want to paste some data in. Yeah, it's now really, really possible and pretty straightforward. So yeah, I could keep going and build out this dashboard and do lots of grouping and aggregating and sorting, but there's lots of other interesting things for the rest to show. We have made some changes to the map. Again, I can dive into this in a bit of depth if we want, but adding workspace icons lets you sort of make these things pretty. And the map itself is now a really great way to sort of explore things. That's not a particularly good example, but let me just swap workspaces to our Lego swag store and bring up the map. The map is a really good way to sort of understand the human knowledge in SquaredUp. So this workspace contains some dashboards and some monitors, and these monitors are monitoring various things that may be on other people's dashboards. You know, maybe you weren't aware of the relationship between these two apps. The map is now a really great way to sort of explore the human intelligence in your monitoring. Cool. Anything else I can show off, Richard?
No, fantastic. Thanks, Adam. I was just thinking there when you were showing off the CSV, and actually I was thinking a little bit about Gert, talking about sort of building out those dashboards, and you can actually use that just to put some static data in or some example of some data, or maybe it's just something you haven't wired up yet, like you say, through a web API or PowerShell. But they're full tiles, so you could probably overlay monitoring on that as well. Either even if it's static data, you could allow that to roll up and be a red indicator on that workspace, or have something sent through into Slack with a notification.
It's a really great way actually to maintain a sort of simple list of filters like you might use in SQL Analytics. Being able to just have a table of your favorite servers that you always want to use when you're filtering a huge data set with SQL, or grouping and aggregating by certain properties. It's just a really straightforward way to just be able to paste in a list that you can use in different ways.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for showing us around. So yeah, a few different treats there. As I say, the list is much longer. That was just Adam picking out some of his favorites and some of the more recent things. So those folders and the CSV being some highlights there. We do release a lot. The best way to stay up to date is on our change log. So in the bottom left of SquaredUp, if you just hover over help, you'll see a what's new option there. If you click on that, it'll take you through to a tool we use called Canny that's hosting our change log. So you'll see updates there, certainly of sort of some of the more visible changes in the product, and we'll be just increasing the content there, just so you've got a really good view of what's changing in SquaredUp day to day. You can sign up to Canny and get notifications. There's also an RSS link if you're still using RSS, or can sort of hook that up to another tool. So I scratched my head a bit and I thought, what does happen when I click on that? But we'll be working on that just to make sure that you do get notifications of everything that's new. But do check that out. So in between sort of the what's new and sort of what's coming, what I wanted to do is now just spend a little time looking at a new feature, or new couple of features that we've introduced just in the last few months that just deserved a bit more airtime, and just go a little bit deeper, because they're really fundamental to our vision behind SquaredUp and this vision to allow you to not just dashboard everything and surface insights from anywhere, but really to bring it into that single picture and make sure all those insights are usable effectively by different users and different teams. I asked ChatGPT, everyone loves a dashboard, right? Or do they? What I said is, some detractors say dashboards are dead. Certainly a narrative that's sort of going around the internet at the moment. To us, that sounds absolutely crazy. We love dashboards, and we know our customers love a lot of dashboards. They mean, like, show me the data. So I asked ChatGPT, give me 5 things that are wrong with dashboards today. And this is what it came up with. I tried it actually a couple of times just to see if it varied, but this was pretty much the list it had assimilated from all of that information out there. And they'll be very familiar. So information overload, just like we know with alerts, you can just get too many alerts. You can end up with too many dashboards as well. Here it's saying sort of data crammed into a single screen. I think we also know that you end up with effectively sort of dashboard sprawl. There's just sort of too much information, very hard to sort of bring it all together or to even find that information. Lack of real-time context. Really the difference between dashboards and reports is that those dashboards are real-time, but also that real-time context in the sense of being able to troubleshoot maybe a live incident or drill down into a particular alert and really explore in real time, what's the cause of that alert. And to do that, you really need that context. Static visualizations, dashboards that just sit there, show you something, and then when you want to just dig in or ask a slightly different question, you can't. You maybe have to go back to the author of that dashboard and ask for something else. We are really, really fundamentally solving that problem with how we're approaching dashboards with SquaredUp Cloud. Yes, we do dashboards, but you'll find increasingly that they will be more interactive and you can explore all the data behind them as much as you need to find the answers to your questions. Poor customizations, just picking out that last piece there around tailoring views to their specific needs. If you do just build one dashboard, often it can be a little overwhelming and not necessarily easy for different users to use. Something we're doing at SquaredUp is taking those dashboards that Nathan showed, where we've got all this information about every one customer. It's all currently on one dashboard, but really actually that information is there for different people to understand different things about that customer and get different insights. So we're wanting to make sure all of our dashboards are role-based as much as possible. And at the end of the day, that low user engagement, dashboards can suffer from set it and forget it. Fine, build a dashboard, maybe it didn't do what I needed, so I don't come back to it. So we really, really want to make sure that data is explorable. And behind sort of our vision really is this concept of making dashboards smart. A lot of the bad rep dashboards get is because they are just static. They are just a one and done. But what if dashboards were smart? What if they understood what was being displayed and would let you dynamically drill down, explore, and correlate that data? That's what we are pursuing. And actually, over the last few months, we've released 2 key features to enable that: dashboard variables and dashboard perspectives. So I'd like to invite Dave up on stage, let's say, but Dave to unmute and give us a little bit of a tour around variables and perspectives. So Dave, I'll stop sharing. I guess we'll probably want to start with variables, two concepts. So probably start with variables and then go from there to perspectives.
Yeah, let me share screen. Thanks, Richard. Let's do that. Hopefully we're seeing that.
Yep.
So here we've got a dashboard that's showing the status of our virtual machines. So we've got a bunch of virtual machines in our kind of dummy application that we call the sales app. So I can see there's 7 VMs, various kind of metrics and so on. And this dashboard is great. It's pretty powerful, lots of data coming in from Azure, one of our connectors kind of on the fly. But what if we want to filter this down to a single VM? Perhaps we know there's some issue with that VM, or we want to kind of track down what's going on. Perhaps we can kind of hover on the lines and maybe see, or maybe we go into full screen mode and kind of pull out one of the VMs. But it's pretty tricky to do when you've got kind of so much data being displayed. And this, to some extent, is what Richard was referring to as a static dashboard. It's like, what can I do with this? Kind of where can I go from here? How do I filter that data down? And what I want to show you is a feature called dashboard variables. So if I jump over here to the same dashboard with added sparkle, you might notice this picker at the top of the screen. So by default, we are showing all objects. But very quickly I can come in and filter that down to a single VM. So perhaps I'm just interested in sales Web 01. And straight away you can see all of those tiles update. I can see the availability, I can see all the metrics, and I'm not kind of overwhelmed with data from lots of different servers or other bits and pieces. So this, like I say, is what we call a dashboard variable. Lets you change the kind of the scope, if you like, or the contents of your dashboard just on the fly. So you no longer have to build lots of different dashboards that are static and kind of switch between them. You can easily create these filterable views, and it's pretty easy to do. So if I create a brand new dashboard, you'll notice this dashboard variable kind of icon at the top, and I can add a variable. And a variable really just has two pieces. It has a set of objects. So in that previous case, it was that set of servers, and it has a default value. So whether you want a default to show all objects or none, and then just make the user pick. And for the objects behind the scenes, that uses our collections. So I can add a new collection, and this lets me pick from all of our objects across the map. So when we connect to one of your data sources, we'll pull in all of the objects, whether that's VMs, disks, whatever it might be. And you can filter this down. So let's go to hosts, and we can add other filters in here. So perhaps resource group, and I'll filter down to those sales app servers. So straight away I can see these are my hosts within that resource group. I'm going to use a dynamic selection. So that just means that if a new server gets added, this will automatically update and have that new server in the list. I don't have to manually go and add that in at some point in the future. I'll hit next to that there. Let's just call that sales VMs and hit save. And we'll default to all objects and hit add. So now we have that variable, we can start actually building the dashboard. So I can go into our tile editor, and you'll probably spot a couple of things. You have a similar picker here, so you can just quickly change it kind of on the fly while you're editing a tile. And additionally, we've filtered that list of data streams to any data that applies to that. So I'm just seeing here host metrics and host data streams. So I can very quickly pull out perhaps a couple of things that I want. So let's start with CPU. I don't need to tell it which ones, it already knows. It's going to pull it back for all of those hosts there, and I can see that graph appear. So really easy to kind of add those metrics in, as it already knows what to show. And let's just add another example there. So memory, I can set the time frame, I could shape it, I could tweak the visualization if I wanted. But very quickly then build up a dashboard that, like I showed you, you can just come in and say, oh, show me the two database servers. That's what I care about at this point. Like what's going on with those two. So yeah, really easy to build, and hopefully kind of pretty easy to get started with. It's worth saying this is just the start of what we're calling dashboard variables. So today you can only add a single variable. In the future we want to support multiple variables, so you could do things like comparisons, as well as things like non-object variables. So perhaps a string that's used in a query, maybe it's an Azure region or something along those lines. So yeah, lots more to come in the future on that one. But that's variables.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave. And so the objects there are from, as you say, the objects that get imported from each data source. You've shown off VMs, but I guess that could be any objects from any data source. And we've been busy adding these into out-of-the-box dashboards, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me jump over. I've got a few examples, out-of-box dashboards. There we go. So it's helpfully organized with my dashboard folders. Thanks Adam and team for that one. So for Azure, there's obviously a ton in here, but a lot of them now have dashboard variables added. So for alerts, I can come in and filter by subscription. It will also remember the values you've chosen previously. So this is another dashboard that's filtered by subscription, and I can see it knows that, yeah, I was interested in commercial services, so I'll see that data come in. And a bunch more across Azure. Azure DevOps is similar, so here's some pipeline dashboards. Again, I can just pick the pipeline that I'm interested in. You can search, so we've got quite a lot of different pipelines here, but you can just search and find what you're looking for. And yeah, some pretty cool ones in here. Performance metrics for that pipeline. What else we got? Test metrics, and so on. And then similar for repositories and workboards as well. Cloudflare is another good example. So you've got the top level dashboard kind of summary, but then you can go over to the specific website and filter that down. So here's some stats for our Scomathon website, or maybe you're interested in SquaredUp.com and so on, and you can quickly filter that. And that, of course, applies to the other dashboards as well, so security, performance, traffic. So these are now available across, I think, nearly all of our data sources. I think the last few are just being rolled out. So expect to see this kind of more and more across all of those out-of-the-box dashboards.
Yeah, as you say, hopefully all the out-of-the-box dashboards have them, and it allows for this interactivity that you've nicely demoed there. And hopefully, I guess, as users are building dashboards, they're now thinking around using that variable up front to sort of add that interactivity into the dashboard. So that solves some sort of interactivity and making sure those dashboards show the data people want. We're going to end up with lots of dashboards across many different workspaces, and in this case, some of these are describing the same things, like some of those VMs, some of them are different. How can we leverage this to find those dashboards when we need to to look for data about a particular object?
Yeah, so we call that dashboard sprawl. So you've got lots of teams engaging with the product, building dashboards, and often when you've got multiple teams, you probably don't even know those dashboards exist and they're out there. So we've got a feature that we're calling perspectives. Now, if you use SquaredUp Dashboard Server, and Patrick Murphy was just talking about them, we have a concept of perspectives, but we've somewhat kind of reinvented it with Cloud or made it kind of even more powerful. So it works a little bit differently, but kind of gives a lot of the same value of that kind of drill down and depth and discovery of data. So I mentioned earlier when SquaredUp connects to a data source, we index all of those objects into what we call that map. So whether that's VMs, disks, websites, whatever it might be. And the map is where a lot of our context and kind of understanding of your world comes from. So when you search for a particular object in SquaredUp or drill down to it from a dashboard, we can start to kind of use that context to know what to show. So let me jump back to that dashboard I had before. And I'll drill down to one of those servers. I'm on my VM view, but actually I want to get a bit more information about this particular server. So a lot of our charts are interactive. So, we talked about static dashboards before. It isn't a view that you're just shown, yeah, this is it, you can't see anymore. You can click through and drill down. So if I drill down to Web 01, we're going to surface all those relevant perspectives. So I can see actually, yeah, we've got that virtual machines view that I just showed you, but I can also see we've got a bunch of other perspectives. So what SquaredUp has done is take the server you're looking at, figure out, okay, we've got various dashboards all over the place. They're showing this value. Can I use a kind of variable to filter it down? So we can automatically just surface those relevant dashboards. Now, I can see we've got a security Splunk dashboard from our security team. So perhaps, I'm not part of the security team. I didn't know that existed. But I drill down here and it's been filtered to that sales Web 01 machine. So everything's kind of automatically filtered to whatever object it is you're kind of interested in. In this example, of course, it's the server. What else we've got? We've got a ServiceNow dashboard from our kind of IT ops and governance space. Some pretty cool stuff on this one, I think. So yeah, patch status. When was it last patched? 10 days ago. That sounds like it needs some updates, I guess. But we can see the history and I can see some failed updates. Maybe I'm in a kind of troubleshooting scenario at this point, and actually, yeah, Andy McMullen, I need to go and contact him and ask him what's going on with the server, get him involved, help bring him into that kind of root cause analysis, whatever it might be. I can see we've got a DevOps dashboard, so perhaps deployments have been failing. So yeah, this is red here. I can see we've got a couple of failed deployments from our infrastructure pipeline. I can see duration seems to be all over the place, so perhaps some issues there. And then lastly, we can see a cost perspective as well. So cost reporting coming in from the Azure Cost API in this instance. So perhaps my role, I'm in the Windows team or the VM team. I've now drilled down and I can suddenly see all this data coming from other teams, other dashboards. Like I say, perhaps I didn't know where they were. I haven't had to go and find them buried within a workspace, but they're all just surfaced as you drill down. And SquaredUp does this for any type of object. So this is a host here, but perhaps you're drilling down to a website or a serverless function, whatever it might be. And the goal really is just to make that kind of troubleshooting, that troubleshooting process and kind of root cause analysis much easier. So yeah, pretty cool. We think hopefully kind of reinventing what dashboards are and giving you that kind of depth of data and discovery.
So those dashboards appear, Dave, automatically as soon as you start to add a variable into a dashboard. It's going to appear here. Is that new dashboard the one you just were starting to construct?
Yeah, exactly. So that was the one I just added. So you can see CPU and memory just popping up there as well. Yeah.
So as different teams build out different views, they will automatically appear here and be correlated with everything else. So for example, if you build a dashboard around a particular application or an incident, perhaps just a one-off dashboard for an incident, that will then appear in the future as you drill down into any object in scope. Yeah, pretty awesome. When I talked about smart dashboards, or when we looked at some of the feedback from ChatGPT, it was complaining about the fact that those dashboards are static in the sense that I can't add data in. So if I can't see the data I want to see here, if there's maybe something else I need to troubleshoot around this server, can I go beyond these dashboards that I have?
Yep, so there's a couple of ways to kind of do that. You can jump to the dashboard itself, so perhaps you've got this dashboard but you want to go and kind of pull in a particular metric. Or we also have the overview perspective. So this is kind of the view you used to see when you drill down to something. So it's still there. It still shows you kind of all the data that's available. So this takes the object I'm looking at, in this case the server, and shows me all of those different metrics. I can see properties, so in this case, the resource group or the subscription it's in, and so on. And I can also see the map, so I can pop that out and say, okay, yeah, it's in this resource group. Okay, show me what else is in that resource group, and I can see there's a whole bunch of stuff. So a super easy way to just explore, like I said, that context and understanding we have. And then, perhaps you have, perhaps you've got a metric here that you want to kind of pull out, save to a new dashboard. We have our data explorer as well. So if you hit explore data, and you can do that on any data you see in SquaredUp, whether it's on these drill downs perspectives, or maybe it's a dashboard somebody else has built. But if I hit explore, you'll get taken into this kind of pseudo tile editor experience, and it's already configured. So it's taken the metric I wanted, it's picked the object, and maybe I can play around with the time frame or some of the visualization options. And from there, of course, just save that to a dashboard. And you then kind of go full circle, because you've got a dashboard that's focused on Web 01. The next time I drill down to Web 01, I'm going to see this dashboard and this data. So really easy to kind of configure things that you want to see for a particular object, a particular server, and so on. Yeah.
Cool, thank you very much. I'll switch back to slides and just recap. Thanks, Dave, very much for that demo. So a deep dive into variables and perspectives. As I say, 2 new features. I think they were deployed around the July timeframe, June-July timeframe, and sort of then just sort of finished off more recently. So deploying in iterations, but really sort of fundamentally changing now, hopefully, your experience within SquaredUp when you start to drill down. Dave showed a use there for VMs. You didn't show the search, but you could just search for any object in the top left there and drill down directly into that. So if you were just wanting some information about a particular VM or any object, you can do that through search. And as Patrick Murphy said, I think he highlighted that view in Dashboard Server as as the magic that gets everyone engaged with SquaredUp internally at CDW. So really excited about bringing that into cloud and unleashing it on every data source that's available. So just to recap, you can use object variables to add interactive filters to your dashboards. That's really something hopefully you can get going with immediately, and as a real sort of immediate value add for your dashboards. Once you do that, or sort of once you do that, they will appear as perspectives, but you can search for those objects or drill down to those objects, as Dave said, from within SquaredUp, and we'll be adding more drill downs across more visualizations. So really wanting to make sure that you never hit a dead end, that you can always just drill down and explore data further and get those answers. When you do drill down, you'll see those dashboards appear, and we call those perspectives, and that's the phrase we used in Dashboard Server as well, really to describe that idea of seeing that object or that context from a different point of view, depending on your role or perhaps your use case. So yeah, thanks, Dave, for that. I'm sure there will be more to talk about with variables and perspectives in the future. So just coming then to sort of more of a forward-looking point of view on cloud, I want to just have a last segment on what's coming next. We do have sort of a bunch of different things all around, that theme of being able to provide that single connected view really on top of any data you have. But what we wanted to do is just do a sneak peek at a few things coming. These are coming hopefully sort of sooner rather than later, so you'll see these over the next few weeks and months. On the left-hand side there, around that theme of the flexibility to build that perfect dashboard, we are looking at bringing across the moustache formatting or the custom formatting that we have in Dashboard Server into cloud. So this will give you the ability to fine-tune any of those strings or that text in the product, and do a lot more when you're even querying data streams. So you can see here we've taken a duration in milliseconds, we've divided that by 1,000 and turned that into seconds, if that's what our users would prefer to see. So just a sneak peek of what we're doing there. That will be coming soon. And then visualizations, we've actually been just building out the sort of current visualizations a little more before we start introducing new visualizations. And the scalar tile is one of those that will be getting a little bit of love, in particular showing a delta value on that scalar. So as well as seeing what the current value is, being able to compare that with some other reference point, whether it's the sort of similar time frame, but in a previous period, or perhaps a sort of long-running average. So look out for that in scalar tiles. On the right, just talking about the breadth and depth of data sources, two cool data sources that we've got coming shortly. One is Postgres, so where any database that's compatible with Postgres, you'll be able to plug now into SquaredUp, so very sort of popular in that more open source domain. And Microsoft Intune. We've had a lot of feedback from customers who have other teams focused more on the sort of IT and sort of user-facing side of the business, and looking to put in reporting and dashboards for their users and devices. So Microsoft Intune is pretty much used everywhere that Microsoft is used, and we've got a nice integration coming there. If you're interested in Intune, we currently have a beta running for that. So if you would like to give that a whirl, do get in touch, and we'll set you up with early access to that Intune plugin. So some nice things coming. What I wanted to do is drill down into one in particular, invite Vince up on stage, one of our senior product managers, to give us a feature preview of the KPI roll-up. And this really is going to be addressing that challenge around that sort of single connected view and what we do at scale. And we have a lot of monitoring, a lot of data all plugged into our dashboards, but really needing to get that big picture. So Vince, hopefully you're there.
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, fantastic. All right, I'll stop sharing and let you pick up the narrative. So I guess we're talking about roll-up, but perhaps it might be useful to start with monitoring first and sort of recap on what we do there.
Yeah, let me do that. Can you see my screen all fine?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, so before I talk about KPI roll-up in SquaredUp, I'd like to take just a little bit of time to cover monitoring and health roll-up in SquaredUp. So this is an overview dashboard that contains some key metrics from a microservice called the order service. So for example, here we have the SLO duration, which indicates the response time of that service. It's using AWS CloudWatch to measure the Lambda function duration. And that's a key metric, and it is being monitored as represented by the dot here next to the tile. In this case, it's actually a monitor that's failing and in a red state. If I explore the dashboard and if I go to the monitoring tab, we can see on the right-hand side that the error threshold is set to 600 milliseconds, and that's clearly exceeded because it's currently at 666. And that's the foundation of monitoring. You add a monitor on a dashboard tile. If I close this tile, it's now if we can basically briefly talk about the health rollup now in SquaredUp. The health rollup takes all the monitors that you've configured on dashboard tiles, like here, and across your workspaces to basically build a complete health snapshot across your organization. So this dashboard also contains more monitors, as we can sort of see like the error rate and the just more the errors per second. And we can see the dashboard overall health is red, and that's basically inherited from the duration monitor that's red, and in turn the workspace has also turned red. So that's what we mean by health rollup. If we zoom out even further, and if we actually go on the homepage of SquaredUp, we can see here a view of all the workspaces in my organization. We can see their health, which is indicated by this ribbon on the left-hand side. That's a new design for the homepage. It's not yet live in the product, but it's coming soon. So we've got the state of all the workspaces and their sort of summary at the top as well. And so that view lets me see at a glance, the state of my entire organization's IT and digital operations. And as a quick reminders of what workspaces are a way to logically organize all your dashboards and data, and they can represent an application, a service, a component, and a team. Okay. So I can slice and dice this view. For example, I can look at a view maybe of all the customers, also these are fictitious customers. I got to be careful. That's showing me the view of all my customers' workspaces and their health, and that's basically a typical use case for like a service or hosting provider. Or I may want to see the health of all the microservices and components that are underpinning one of our important application. We call it the Lego Swag Store application. So what I can do is use the tags and sort of filter down by the Swag Store application, and that views and shows me all the components and microservices that form part of that application. And that is a health rollup. Essentially, for the Lego Swag Store application, I've got 5 workspaces, 2 of them are red, and that basically gives me a starting point to perhaps start some investigation. So that's health rollup and monitoring, which kind of relates to KPI. So now what I want to do is talk about KPI and KPI rollup specifically. Because typically we like to see information that we can sort of process more easily, one number that can tell us maybe the full story. And we use KPIs in all aspects of life, right? The sales might be interested in that conversion rate, or the monthly active users. Perhaps the support team might be interested in the customer satisfaction score, application uptime, and so on. So although this view here is useful to see the health of my workspaces, I'd also like to see key value, key number for those microservices, perhaps KPIs that I can relate to, maybe even share to my colleagues or stakeholders. So let's take a closer look at KPIs in SquaredUp. I'm going to go back to the overview dashboard I was on earlier for this microservice. So look at the duration. So duration is an important KPI that I want to track for all our microservices. So what I will do is, if I edit that tile again, and this time I will go to the KPI tab, you can essentially enable any metric on the dashboard to be published as a value outside of this workspace, essentially for everyone to see and consume. So that's already been turned on, and in practice, what that means is that if I go back to the home page of our order service, I can start to see some important KPIs being surfaced at the top level. So I've got 4 KPIs for this microservice. They're all important. I need to be able to track them as a DevOps manager, perhaps, for this microservice, but I also need to be able to maybe report on those KPIs. So as I said earlier, enabling KPI on a time, on a metric, essentially making those key values available for everyone to see outside of this workspace. And so the best way to summarize KPI and essentially use and visualize KPI rollup is back on the home page. What we've done is we've built a view that lets you see those KPIs here at a glance. So let me just filter that view just a little bit. And now all of a sudden I get a clear view of the microservices and components for our Lego Swag Store app, but more importantly, I'm able to see now their respective KPIs. So that's KPI at a glance. It's also worth noting that KPI and monitoring, as you can see, they kind of works together. So as in one metric can be both monitored as well as published as a KPI, which means for the shipping duration, for instance, as a monitor, I can also see and make sure, see on that view whether a KPI is actually deviating from its target. So that's why this issue can be quite useful.
So fantastic, thanks, Vince. So almost this is like the tip of the iceberg, right? For each one of these workspaces, for each one of these KPIs and health state, we actually have potentially a whole bunch of dashboards, even with roll-up within those dashboards, which maybe being consumed day to day, maybe being consumed by different service owners, infrastructure owners, and so on. This allows that roll-up into one top-level view, perhaps good for the support team, an executive view, or sort of some other team that needing to keep an eye on these KPIs. I guess the new features, just to sort of clarify that. So we've got the new layout. I think Adam showed this view briefly in the current layout. So this is a new clean styling for this, but also the ability to add those KPIs onto each of these. And we're calling these the card visualization. I guess the question is can we save these off as different dashboards for different users?
Yes, yeah, we can, absolutely. So this is obviously something that we've got planned. So the KPI view that I've sort of demonstrated, that what you can see is going to be available sometimes next week, and then thereafter we have a roadmap to improve that. So two features in particular that we've got planned to answer your question, Rich. The first one would be the ability to save multiple views of this homepage. So you might have a KPI view of all your customers, or you might have maybe a monitoring view for all your applications. And then the second feature that relates to your question as well is you'd be able to add those cards on dashboards so that they can be shared, like you can already do that today on shared dashboards.
All right, great. Look forward to seeing that come out. So this, the scenario you talked us through here was a bunch of microservices contributing to an overall application. This is our Lego swag store that we take off to events and do some Lego building. And I think, you know, the view here is very clearly showing you've got both an issue with the API gateway, but more specifically the order service, and we can see immediately that there's an issue with the duration that's exceeded our sort of SLO. So super clear to be able to pinpoint perhaps a performance issue, you know, within an application topology. What are sort of the other use cases for KPIs in this rollup? You mentioned a few, like, you know, across our business we have a number of different KPIs, some of them technical, some of them non-technical. But how do you see this being used beyond just that sort of application KPI view?
Yeah, sure. I think that the main use case probably that comes to mind is real-time reporting. So the ability to surface, again, your key metrics for things that you're responsible for. So, for example, if you're maybe a service provider or hosting provider, you might want to look at your customer workspaces. And here it can show the most important KPIs at a glance that I care to track for my customers. So for instance, I care about the cost of running their application, their operations. That's represented by the Azure cost KPI customers. But I also care about their satisfaction. So you can see that customer 12 isn't too happy. A score of 2 out of 5 on the CSAT isn't very good. But that essentially lets you pinpoint where a problem might be and whether you're meeting your SLAs essentially. Another use case that we sort of seen, I'll try to reproduce here, is if I actually look at a view of my teams, and if I pick out, let's say the DevOps teams, so that's probably representing a large organization with multiple teams. This view is showing the same 3 KPI across all of the teams. So the teams have been sort of mandating to publish those 3 KPIs for reporting purposes. So those are change failure rate, lead time average, MTTR, this kind of akin to DORA metrics, if you want. And it's really useful here because you can see at a glance, you know, perhaps I think it's team 7 is doing okay on change failure rate, not too good, but they're actually fixing their problems quite quickly. So they kind of, you know, build quick, break things and fix quick. So that's okay. Whereas team 9 here, the one in red that you can see probably sorted by health, that would be more useful. You know, clearly has got some issues that need to be addressed. That view is quite useful to sort of give you that picture maybe every morning, every week at a glance of, you know, what are the area in your business that you should be or in your team that you should care about.
Yeah, and tying that into what Adam showed us at the beginning there, some of these metrics could be coming from some CSV data, maybe a spreadsheet, or maybe just some static data that each team is having to update and publish, but it sort of rolls up to this view here, whereas other teams might be plugging into, say, Azure DevOps or Jira. It doesn't have to be the same from team to team, right? So KPIs also allows us to standardize those metrics across workspaces. I guess if we were to relate that to application topology, one metric could come from CloudWatch, because that's kind of a response time of a Lambda function up in CloudWatch. Another could come from Azure Monitor, or maybe another even from SCOM if it's an on-prem dependency. But you can still roll those up independently of the data source into one view. And Adam gave us a teaser, but I can see a map button in the top right there. Do you want to give us a flavor of how we can piece all this data together into a topology view?
Yeah, I'll give you a sneak peek of what's coming with what we call internally the global workspace map feature. So that's basically about helping find the root cause of a problem. So especially when it comes to complex applications with many dependencies. So here, if I switch to the map view, I referred earlier to our Lego Swag Store application. Now that application is actually made up of several dependencies, some of which we just looked at, the order service, for instance. So we knew the order service was red, and what that view lets us do is two things, I guess. You can see the KPI, obviously still in that view, that's still important, but you can also start to work out the dependencies between the services, and it turns out that the API gateway is dependent on the order service. That was red on the previous view, but the previous view didn't sort of tell us that the order service was actually causing the API gateway to be red, and therefore the application to be red. So those dependencies are useful here, because they basically let you pick out the lowest, let's say the lowest failing entity, which in that case is the order service. That's probably the one that would help me maybe solve the root cause of all of my issues with the Lego Swag Store application. So what I can do from this view, beyond just interacting with it, actually do something useful, which is drill down to the order service, pick out what's wrong with it. The SO duration has exceeded the threshold. So we're back on the dashboard we were looking at earlier. And then from this dashboard, I can then derive some conclusion. I can see at the bottom that there was a recent release made to production that could have caused the duration of that Lambda to exceed its threshold. So what I can do now with this dashboard is basically share it or escalate that issue to the DevOps or the dev team that's looking after that service, and highlight that there was a recent release. Maybe something is failing because of it.
All right, thank you very much, Vince. That's brilliant. Gert, I can see your hand raised. I'll come to Q&A at the end. I hope we've got a bit of time. But just to sort of quickly wrap up, hopefully between.
Sorry.
Go on, Gert.
No, the retention. It's all 30 days, but can it be longer, or is that the maximum?
The retention for those KPIs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so at the moment, so those KPIs are a little like the monitor state. They are just a current snapshot. So we're sort of just able to roll up that current number, both with those monitors and the values we're looking at, storing those over time, so you can then start reporting on them historically. So a little like Vince said, in terms of just sort of rolling out some of those changes there, the ability to save those dashboards will also be rolling out that historical view. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Vince. And actually, just tying that in with Dave's demo there, I hope you can sort of really see how, yes, dashboards allow you to surface all this data from these different tools and provide people those insights in very, very easy to consume places. But actually, we want to really start piecing that all together into one sort of continuous landscape of insights across the product, whether that's sort of drilling down into specific objects and entities, so you can really get kind of those low-level answers, all the way to rolling that up to that top level, as Vince showed us. So very, very sort of powerful set of features coming.